Center Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Looking at people whose lives I know had been in a bad place, and then seeing mine in that place or worse, much worse, and maybe we know our own fallings and failings best because we're in the midst of them. But then seeing a person whose life comes out of it because of that saving grace, thank heaven for people like that that can show us a path by their example and say, no, there's a different way to live.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in the miry depths where there is no foothold. I have come into the deep waters. The floods engulf me. I am worn out calling for help. My throat is parched. My eyes fail looking for my God. Down in the lowlands where the water is deep. Oh, you Charlie Peacock fans out there, you know that song. Welcome to the show today. It's Down in the Lowlands, baby. Hear my cry, hear my cry. And you could not listen to that and not hear that funky bass. That was a funky bass sound. That was a funky bass part. And the man who created and played that part is my guest today. You know, I don't think I've seen him since 2002, 2003, something like that. But he's close to my heart every day. Think about him a lot. And that's the one, the only, Mr. Eric Heilman. Welcome to Intersect, Eric.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello.
Hello. Say hello to the folks, Eric.
Hey. Out there in Radio Land.
Yes. Yeah, I know they've all been wondering all these years who played bass on that song. And you the man. You the man.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. It was fun. I remember well.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. It's back in Sacramento.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Where we first met, you know.
That's right.
We did a lot of gigs together.
How long ago was that? Is that like, we're talking 30 years now, 35 maybe?
Well, I moved to Sacramento first in 1979.
Yikes.
So you were the math teacher.
So that's well, it's one less than 78. So 78 would have been 40 years ago. So call it 39. Yikes.
Yeah,
half
that's
time, it's amazing.
Yeah. That's my children are not that old. And they're pretty old.
Yeah.
So what's happening, man? You like I just alluded to your being a math teacher. Mm-hmm. But you know, when we first met, man, you know, we were both like up to our necks in music and in that great atmosphere in Sacramento, you know, surrounded by great players and everybody like being really into the music and experimenting. And we used to all play in each other's bands, you know, and there were plenty of places to play, the same places to play, but,
mm-hmm.
you know,
mm-hmm.
you could always play there. And it was just great, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I miss those days.
Yeah, isn't it? It's a different scene now for young players coming up trying to find a place to develop. I think it's such a different world on so many levels, right? But that one thing, just on a musical level, is so different than it was when we were younger. Different thing. I remember seeing you and Roger and Al Key at the Roger Smith and Al Key at the man. What was the name of that club on Broadway? Not Broadway. What the heck club? The After. I'm not going to remember the name.
The one on Sundays, the one that we did on Sundays.
Yeah, it was on Stockton Boulevard. Was it on Stockton Boulevard?
Yeah. I can't remember the name of that place, but yeah, that was our Sunday gig.
Yeah, I remember.
Thunder Wonder.
That's right.
And you and I had a gig for 2 years every Monday night at the Chinese joint.
On Broadway.
On Broadway. 2 years.
Was it that long?
Yes, it was. Every Monday night.
With Bob and Joyce, with Joyce Diamond and Bob Filling, probably?
That's right.
Yeah, crazy.
So Bob Filling Trio.
Oh, yeah.
Man, cut my teeth on that one.
Yeah.
Bob was a great player and a very patient man.
Oh man, we were all being patient with each other back then.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember those some great gigs. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then when we started working with Charlie, that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, a whole different kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, whole different trip, And Henry, Robinette, Joe Gilman, Steve Heilman. Who's the other guitar player? Who's the other bass player? I think he's from Poland. Butza Najcek.
Butza Najcek,
Najcek, yeah. And who's the other guitarist?
Well, there's a lot of guitarists. I'm sure you're thinking of another jazz guitar player.
Yeah, he played mostly acoustic and played a lot by himself.
Doug Pauly, maybe?
Doug Pauly.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
A lot of those guys are still playing, man. Steve's busy and Joe's teaching and doing all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of people are still doing stuff.
Yeah, and Tom Perrin's been teaching privately almost 40 years now.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
And Darius Babazadeh.
Darius. Oh, man. I think I saw him. I went back to town when Eric Clevin passed away. I think I saw him then.
Yeah, that's when I last saw you, actually. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Was it?
I think that's the last time I saw Darius. No, the last time I saw you was when I came out to visit Audrey at USC. Yeah. And you stopped by the house for a night. Yeah, we had dinner together. Great fun.
With your mom too, wasn't your mom here that time?
That's right.
Yeah.
She was, man. Took her to her first USC football game.
Oh my gosh. And now Audrey's going up and doing production. You said last time we talked, she's working here in LA, busy. That's amazing.
Yeah, just had a second child last month.
Oh my gosh. Did you tell that? That is crazy.
She's got 2 boys now.
Oh my heaven. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Where
Xavier, and Roman. Wow. Xavier Elijah and Roman Isaiah.
Nice biblical names. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, strong to the hoop.
Hallelujah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, their last name is Rux, R-U-X.
Wow.
From New Orleans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, whoever that man is, he's a lucky one.
He is. He knows it too.
Yeah.
So tell me, man, let's find out about Eric Heilman.
Okay.
Where were you born? Where were you born and stuff? I think you were born somewhere back east, right?
No, I was born in Sacramento. That was hometown.
You're native?
That's my home. Yes. Yeah.
For some reason I thought you were born in Pennsylvania or somewhere.
Oh man, no. I'm born and raised in Sacramento and went to Sacramento High School and started doing, my playing started probably there when I was in, probably when I was a freshman in high school. Or no, I guess back then high school started in 10th grade. So I was a 10th grader, started playing in the jazz band there, and had the good fortune to meet David Kahn, who was the jazz band director of that high school. So got started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And so started playing then, and I met Darius Babazadeh then, and we went around for quite a long time in high school. And so, yeah, that's my start anyway.
Sac High, huh?
Sac High. Mm-hmm.
So how did you come to play the bass?
How did it? There's a weird story. I think I had met a person the year before, that summer before high school, who played electric guitar, and I thought he was the coolest guy in the world. And he says, if you could play bass, you could play in my band. And I said, oh man, that sounds
really
cool. And that was all it took. So, I played piano and stuff before that. And so I went and took a few piano lessons from Mel Nelson. Do you remember Mel Nelson?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mel was teaching at a local music store, and I went to the local music store, and I didn't know him from anybody, except there he was, and he was the teacher, and he gave me a few lessons, and that got it started down the road to ruin.
Down the road to perdition.
Oh man.
Hey, I got a weird Mel Nelson story for you.
Okay.
Mel Nelson died here in Nashville.
Oh no.
He had lived here for many years, and I never knew it.
Oh my gosh.
Until he passed away, and Henry Robinette came to play at his memorial, and asked me and Charlie to play with him.
Wow.
So we did. And, it was like, he lived here all this time, and how did I not know that?
Isn't that funny? I mean, there's two things funny. One, that we can live in the same town as people that we have been close to in the past or have some connection to, and not reinvigorate that connection or develop it. And also that it's a funny thing to get to this stage in life, and people that we know that have lived a long life even are beginning to pass away. It's strange chapters in time. Yeah.
Yeah. Things are happening.
Yeah.
Excitement on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you started playing bass, took bass. Did you take electric bass lessons or upright with Mel?
Electric. And it wasn't too long. He just gave me a few lessons, but got me started. And then when I started that was in the summer before my sophomore year. And then at high school, David Kahn just started giving me tips. He was a bass player too, and a very talented musician, obviously. And he gave me some tips and gave me some basic theory lessons. I'll never forget it. He just sat me down one afternoon, because come after school and I'll show you what you need to know. And he just gave me this 1 hour rush through the basic theory and stuff. And it was like, he says, yeah, I know it's like drinking from a fire hose, but it'll all make sense to you later. And then started playing in his jazz band, and basically from playing and trying to experiment and figure things out, and with tips from guys like that, got started on electric. And then I think I checked out a high school string bass that was like a piece of junk in the closet that I took home, and somebody had said, you ought to learn this. And so kind of got that interest going, and then later began to pursue that kind of more seriously.
Did you take any lessons on that?
I did. I took some classical kind of stuff, not so much jazz based lessons ever. But I took some. It's like there was a couple teachers in town that I got connected to. One was a guy that played in the local symphony that also worked with Larry Lanetta's dad, Stan Lanetta, at the music circus at the local music theater thing. And so I got connected to him, and he gave me actually some electric lessons and some acoustic lessons, kind of both, I guess, some basic kind of jazz stuff. And I also studied with Shelley Denny. Remember Shelley Denny?
Oh, yeah. I do.
Studied with him a little bit, took, just lessons here and there. And then, most of it, like most of us, it's work you do on your own. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sac had a lot of great musicians, both jazz and classically trained. And it seems like a lot of those guys taught. They played the music theater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I remember more the music theater than I do any sort of symphony in Sacramento. Did they have a symphony?
They did for a long time. I think it's defunct now, but it was there for a long time. And I don't think they have it anymore, though, which is a shame. But that's typical across the country, right? Classical music organizations in smaller or mid-sized towns have struggled, I think. But,
yeah. I remember the music theater. That was always going on in the summertime. That was always strong.
Yeah. I think that's changed too now with the advent of recorded stuff. I think even traveling Broadway shows bring through recorded orchestra,
tracks.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah. Again, a different world, right? Man, it's totally. Yeah.
Well, we have a pretty strong symphony here in Nashville.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I just read something about Nashville's growing like crazy. So you guys are getting too big for your britches urban-wise. I hear this auto development stuff taking off downtown. Is that true?
Yeah, man. These cowboy boots are getting too small. You know how that feels. You put on a pair of boots that are too small, and it starts to rub on your corns and stuff.
Yeah. I just know living in LA. I mean, Audrey will tell you living in LA with all the development stuff, and man, it's just the crowdedness of it is hard to manage sometimes.
I know. They're preparing to move to Atlanta.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's becoming the Hollywood of the South. So
because people can't afford California anymore. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's cool. Then that's neat.
Yeah, so maybe by the first of the year they'll be in Smatlanta.
Wow,
which is pretty crowded too already. So, but a little different from LA.
Yeah.
So, you get out of high school, and what do? You went to Sac State, right?
For a minute, and then I went down to Cal State Northridge down in the San Fernando Valley for a little bit. Followed Darius and Larry Lynetta were down there, and some other people that I knew. And so I went down there for, I think, one semester, and then came back. And then came back home and dropped out of school and started washing dishes and working at some of the Sunday jam sessions, and And in fact, I subbed for Mel Nelson on a jam session one Sunday, and after washing dishes all day long, and Jimmy Robinson was on that gig and some other guys, and they said, "Man, why don't you take this gig? Mel never shows up." So I said, "Okay," and started doing that Sunday thing, and then connecting to other people in town. And so I didn't go back to school. I just stayed out of school and started working, and then after that got picked up in a top 40 band with do you remember Wayne Johnson and some of those people? Actually it was Eric Cleven's gig, and he was quitting a band, and
okay,
so I started working around town doing jazz things and then top 40 things, and and down the, as I said before, down the road to ruin. You know what I'm saying?
Perdition.
Oh man.
Hey, so I'm surprised you didn't go back to school. Why was that?
Foolishness or just I was working a lot and maybe because I didn't know what school was for at that time. I mean, I had been a music major, I think, at first, and then once I started working, I was working 6 days a week with the top 40 band and doing jazz gigs on the side, and I guess I just didn't think it was the right thing, and that I mean, in retrospect, that was pretty foolish, but how foolish?
So you went back to school though, right? Later?
Eventually, yeah, I did. After I think I hit a rock bottom point, wrecked a car, and had some rude awakening moments. One of many, right? That said, you better get out of the mess you're in. And so I went back to school. I think maybe 3 or 4 years later at Sac, and again went back to Sac State and kind of plugged in some things there, and dropped out again later. But that's yeah.
What did you study at Sac State?
So I went back. I think I was a communication studies major then when I went back. And I think I did some music classes on the side, thinking I might do a music minor, but kind of thinking that music degree wasn't so useful because I was already working, right? I didn't feel like I really needed a music degree. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think at that point, I think I was a communications major.
Okay.
But then I dropped out again and moved down to LA, or I went on the road with Ice Capades for a year, and then I moved to LA, or some combination of those things. And so I dropped out again, and then was on the road for a year doing that, the Ice Capades thing, which was interesting. And then
what
came
was that
back.
like?
Well,
yeah. What was?
Well, it was a big mess, but it was, I tried to make it a productive time at practicing and stuff, but it was just, a lot of easy reasons to get in trouble and do things that weren't very wise. And so I did it for a year.
Okay. All right. Where did you travel with the Ice Capades?
We did. It was like a medium-sized city kind of company. There were 2 or 3 companies, and some of them did the big towns. We did medium-sized towns. So they came through Sacramento, actually, and they had just started the tour for the season. It was the beginning of the summer. And again, I think Stan Lanetta was contracting the local musicians, and they told him, hey, do you know anybody that's on the loose, bass player? We need somebody to join the tour. And Stan said, well, Eric's not doing anything. Well, you should call him. So he had me come down and sit in with the band one afternoon, and they offered me the job and said, meet us in Odessa, Texas. And so a week later, I was in Odessa, Texas, starting a tour with them. And yeah, we did towns like Milwaukee, and we went places in the Midwest, places in the South. We went up to Moncton, Quebec, kind of small, medium-sized towns, stuff like that. Not big size.
So what's a day in the life with the Ice Capades?
Oh my gosh. Was sleep in the hotel. For me, a day in life for me, I haven't thought about their ages. So sleep in the hotel, get up and practice for a little bit, go to lunch, and then go to the arena and do a show. I think we did like 5 shows a week or 6 shows a week, a couple on Saturday, a couple on Sunday. And then we'd travel on the bus from one town to the next. And sometimes that was a couple days driving. And so how often did you change shows? Well, we did like a week in each town. That's what it looked like.
But I mean, change the show, the production.
Oh, never. It was the same show.
Oh my goodness. For a year?
No kidding. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'll give you a highlight. A good thing that happened on the tour. We went to Louisville, Kentucky, and since that was a bigger town than typical for us, we hired a pretty good local orchestra, and the guitar that was the local guitar player that they hired was a guy named Jimmy Rainey, who's if you're a jazz person, that might ring a bell. And he's I didn't know him until they said, hey, that's Jimmy Rainey on guitar. And it's like, Jimmy Rainey, that kind of rings a bell. And I said, yeah, man, he's a great player. So the day we were rehearsing with the band, I started, instead of playing the show music, I was just playing some jazz and stuff and messing around. And we started jamming, he and I were, so we just started playing some jazz stuff. And he says, hey man, why don't you come by the house tomorrow and we'll just hang out a bit. So I went to hang with Jimmy Rainey, I think 3 days that week. We did the show together, but then we just hung out together at home at his, playing jazz and just talking and hanging out. So that was fun. And then a couple years later, I actually went back to Louisville to visit my brother and went to a club, and there's Jimmy Rainey playing jazz in the club. And I went, hey, you won't remember me, but we hung together for a few days, and he says, "Oh yeah, I remember you." So, that was a trip. So that was one fun thing that happened on the tour. That was fun.
Yeah, I haven't heard of Jimmy. Is he any kin to Chuck Rainey?
The bass player?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. He has a son, Doug Rainey, I think is the name. His son is a guitar player too. Huh. Not Chuck.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
So you did that a year, and did you stop doing that because you got sick of it, or what?
Yeah, and it was obviously not going anywhere good for me personally, and and the lifestyle that, let's talk about the lifestyle of a musician in those days, right? So it was just a mess, and yeah, I think, musically, obviously not very stimulating. And, I have moments like that every now and then where you might meet somebody on the tour, or some of the local guys might have a jam session or something. And so you can connect and do something creative, but it was just pretty terrible otherwise. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think at that point, after the tour was over, I went back home, and then I forget, man, I went out to Indiana to go to school at IU Bloomington for a bit. Like crazy, right? So, yeah,
well, IU had some great bass player there, didn't they?
A couple, yeah, classical bass players. Well, actually, a great bass player that people might know now is a guy named Edgar Meyer, a classical bass player, crossover kind of classical and bluegrass kind of thing, composer. Yeah, he's pretty famous. He was there as a student when I was there. I was only there about a year or maybe 6 months. And, I went out there and then moved to, and then I started working in Indianapolis and just moved to Indianapolis and was doing a jazz gig out there with I met Bob Hurst there, who later played with Wynton Marsalis.
Really?
And, Joe Gilman was out there too at the time. And so there was a little Sacramento connection. So funny how.
Yeah, Joe graduated from IU, didn't he?
He did. He got his bachelor's there. Yeah.
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 Dude, I think you've moved around more than me. I didn't. I didn't think that was possible.
A rolling stone, right? Yeah.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Well, didn't you play on that? You played on that, right?
Yeah. Let's not tell anybody.
All right.
Okay. Dude, I've always known you to be a straight arrow. So you must have got over your partying and all that sort of stuff by the time I met you, because, man, you were like, you were pretty straight.
Compared to what? Yeah, I guess. Well, the funny thing is, Aaron, I was thinking about like how to talk about, you mentioned before, we might talk about life before Jesus and after Jesus and what that looks like, and thinking about how big of a mess it can be. I think a lot of us can present a front that looks like, I got my thing together and I'm living a life that's responsible, or being a hardworking musician or a dedicated jazz musician even can seem like a straight arrow kind of thing to do. But I think that in the midst of all that, there can be a whole lot of mess that people don't see. And so there was plenty of that in that, by the time we met, I think I'd been through some of the mess and learned some lessons about it, and maybe was coming out of it, but still had a lot of learning to do and still had some finding of Jesus to do before the arrows got straight and the paths were made straighter, at least,
Yeah. Down in the lowlands, baby.
And that's the truth. Yeah.
Where the water is deep.
Been there. Yes, sir. Yeah. Been under that water.
Right. Which is just a hand sticking up.
That's right. So.
And bubbles coming up.
Oh, man. Yeah. What am I doing? The waters are over my neck. Yeah.
So when we met, what restaurant were you working at? You weren't working there when we met, but you mentioned working in a restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I first dropped out of college and was trying to pick up things around town. My dad had told me, if you're going to live at home, you got to go get yourself a job. And so the only thing I knew was a job my brother had at a pancake house on Broadway and 21st Street, the Pancake Circus. So I went to.
I remember that. You worked there?
I worked there for about 3 months as a dishwasher. It was the most. And the funniest thing is, there was this cheesy background music while I was washing dishes all day long in the muck and the mire. Talk about having your feet in the muck and the mire. It was literally pancakes and fried eggs on the ground and walking around in it with a foot of it, or an inch of it caked on the bottom of your foot. But in the background, there was this cheesy Muzak tape of all these you ever heard these really tacky arrangements of the Marine Corps whistling some melody as you listen to your worst Muzak tape in the world. But I didn't know it. It was all these Antonio Carlos Jobim songs and stuff. But I had no idea, or all these old jazz standards. I had no idea. I was listening to this really cheesy music. And at the end of the summer, I started working some jam sessions. Then I got asked to play at the Bull Market I had met Jimmy Robinson, and he said, I got a gig a few days a week at the Bull Market with this old couple, and we need a bass player. So why don't you come down? So I went and bought myself a sport jacket. He said, you got to wear a sport jacket. So I said, okay. So I showed up to the gig, and it was a trumpet player and a wife who played piano and sings. And he said, well, do you know, How My Heart Sings or something? And I'm like, no. And he says, well, we're in the key of F. Fake it. 1, 2, 3, go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he starts playing these songs. And I was like, oh, crap, I know that song.
I know that song. I heard the soldiers whistle it.
Pancake Circus. I'm not lying. And it's most of the songs, that's how it went. He says, we're in B flat. 2, 3, let's do it. Here we go. And Jimmy's and the piano player would point to the root note every now and then, and I try to figure it out. And that's how I learned to play a lot of songs, was just using my ear and
cut your teeth at the Pancake Circus.
So yeah,
that was your ear training class.
I'm serious. That's so funny, but that's the truth.
I remember that place, the Pancake Circus. Wow.
Yeah.
I used to think when I first moved there that I never went there because I always thought it was real expensive.
What?
And wow. I don't know why. I was just a country boy,
Yeah. It was just one step below Denny's, It was expensive. It was
Hey, I worked in a restaurant I worked in 2 restaurants in Atlantic City the summer of 1967. I was going to be a senior in high school in September. And it was customary for guys of that age to go up to Atlantic City, New Jersey and get all these odd jobs and make money, and we'd stay in these what do you call them? They weren't brothels, but they were houses that had been converted, and they had bunk beds in them and stuff like that. And people would rent you a room, and they charge you by the head. You could probably get 4 people in a room.
Oh my!
And everybody had different jobs, different hours. And I was a busboy. I never stayed there long enough to be promoted to being a dishwasher.
Is that a promotion? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. But I was a busboy, and I'd never been a busboy before, and nobody told me anything. It was just like you just take the dirty dishes off the table. Here, put them in this bucket here, wipe the table off, and the waitress will come by and put on napkins and silverware and a clean glass. And You just take that stuff back into the kitchen and the dishwasher or wash it. And, okay, I got that.
Mm-hmm.
So my first night at this one place, I come out. No, it was during the day. It's breakfast, right? No, it was dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was dinner. Because I remember them dropping steaks on the floor.
And picking them up.
And just throwing them. The side they'd hit the floor, they'd put it back on the grill for like 2 seconds and put it back on the plate and send it out.
Yeah.
and there was money on the table when I was cleaning the table. So I thought it was mine.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, after a couple of hours, man, both my pockets are like bulging. And, I'm walking and I'm going, ching, 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 ching. And
the waitress came looking for you.
So they call a meeting. They call a meeting with me and this other busboy, I think, and all the waitresses. And the restaurant manager, who's very nice, goes, the waitresses have been questioning whether there's any money on the tables or anything, because usually they get tips, but today seems pretty slim, and nobody's making any money or making any tips, and that's not normal here.
And
they
you
usually
gulped.
make a lot of money. Yes, I did. I gulped, stood silent, and never went back.
Oh man.
But they didn't ask me to empty my pockets or anything. I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed.
Oh my God.
I was totally embarrassed. And I think after that, 2 days after that, so I went back home, sit later for this. I was already in a band. I was making money. Yeah. I just went because my friends went.
Everybody did now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just went back home. Called the manager of the band and I went, "Hey, I'm back." I don't think I was gone very long, maybe a week and a half. And he goes, "Okay, well, we're playing here and here and here this weekend." I went, "Okay, I'll be there."
And you got the gig back.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Got my gig back, and but man, I feel you. That food would drop on the floor, man, and they'd take that food and just throw it back on the grill. The French fries too,
Yeah. Is it funny? How many decisions in life do we make because that's just what everybody does?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pied Piper. We just follow the crowd,
And even when they're going down that bad road, that's the way we go. Yeah.
Right. And some of us get saved from it and some of us don't.
Yeah. One way or the other.
Yeah. So, like I said, you and we're working with Charlie. We did that. Remember that jazz gig we had at the pizza joint?
Which pizza? Oh, Paragary's?
Yeah, Paragary's. I still have the newspaper write-up for that somewhere upstairs. It's in a box somewhere.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That was a fun little gig. Didn't last that long, but.
No, but that was fun. We were it was kind of a little jazzy kind of thing. Charlie was doing some of his original stuff. I'm trying to remember. That was when he was still like coming out of Scorch Brothers or something. He was still doing some of his, it was pre Charlie Peacock launch. It was kind of early. Yeah. He was a very creative guy. I remember that very well. Yeah.
And I know he want me to tell you hello. I sent him a Facebook message last Tuesday because folks, Eric was supposed to be on the show last Tuesday, but I had a problem here with my Pro Tools and I couldn't figure it out. So I had to push him back to today. Got it all worked out. But last week I sent Charlie a Facebook post and told him you were going to be on the show. And because I'm trying to get him on the show. But
I'm surprised you haven't had them already. Yeah.
Man, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Okay.
All you folks out there, you need to send Charlie Peacock a message and tell him he's got to be on Intersect.
There you go.
Before summer's end. So, how did you become a believer? Were you raised a believer?
No. My family, we went to church kind of when I was a kid, and it was called the Friends Meeting. It's the kind of the Quaker church.
Yeah.
But my parents were very much not Christian, kind of anti-Christian. I think at that time the Friends Church was more of at least that part of it was more of a social, kind of social action kind of thing. And so when they found out, there were some older people in the church that took us to Sunday school and began teaching us out of the children's Bible. And my parents kind of freaked out and said, wait a minute, that's not what we had in mind. So even my grandfather had been a strong Christian, and we had the old family Bible around, but that was not part of our experience. So, fast forward to being in the Peacock band with you guys and watching you all come to faith. And I remember the day you and I were up at that Pollock Pines Jazz Brunch, and we were going home, and I said, Aaron, you want to stick around afterwards and have a cup of coffee or a beer? And you said, no, man, I'm going home. I'm going to get washed today. I'm going to get baptized today. I'm like, wow. Watching
Ghost
you.
Mountain.
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. So I remember those times of watching you and other people become kind of revitalized, and the word is reborn, but watching that in a real way happen in your life and happening in Charlie's life, and seeing the difference that it made in him and who he was. And I remember too, one night we were all sitting around. It was at I think Malarkey's was the name of the club, and the band was going to go out, and we all prayed in the back. And here I was in a prayer circle. We all had our hands on each other's shoulders, and Charlie's praying for each one of us and praying for me. And I remember being pretty convicted about, wow, this is a weird thing to be part of, because I'm not really part of it. So there was always a kind of a recognition that there was something happening in people's lives that I really felt a lot of admiration for, but that I wasn't doing myself. And so, but it took a long time after that, after the Peacock and then after, quite a few more years probably before I got to the place where I said, okay, you really need to discover a reason for living, a reason for going forward, when that water's deep and it's up and over your neck and you're drowning. And so it took a while longer for me to get to that place and say, I need to look for that thing that I know about, but I don't know. And so that when I was living in San Francisco on my own, I think you came up and played a gig with my band, the Hot Foot Band at that club on Union Street. And
I did. Yeah, I did.
And so it was during that time, when I was kind of exploring, trying to find different paths and different ways to go, that I said, well, there's a path with a capital P and a person with a capital P, then I need to get to know. So that's that. I think, I went out and bought a Bible and did the thing where you open the Bible and you put your finger down and say, well, if God's going to say something to me, He's going to say it. So I put my finger down.
Did.
And it was a good verse. It was Jeremiah 6:16 was the verse, which is
really?
Stand at the crossroads and look, ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest in your souls, I think is basically what it says. Wow. And so that was, God does work in even silly moments like that when He says, yeah, you are at the crossroads and you do need to look. And so I started looking then, and I think it took a lot longer even after that before I really became a person who could say, I know Jesus, I know who that is. Mm-hmm. And even some mess in the midst of that, but getting married was, part of that subsequent process, and finding a wife and then having children and saying, okay, I'm going to try to be a dad and try to do that well, which is hard. But and knowing that there's things in the midst of that, as I should have known long before, that there are things that only God can manage in your life. And so I was glad to have him with me then and with me now. So
yeah. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Pass the plate. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hey, you and I had one great experience that I'll never, ever forget. Well, we've had some great experiences, but there was one.
Remind me.
That I'll never forget.
Remind me.
And that's, we went to Flavo Fest with Charlie Peacock.
Oh, gosh, do I remember that.
And we had 2 days off, I think.
Yeah.
And we got on a train and we went to Belgium.
Yeah.
And stayed with Marc Deschamps.
I never forget it.
Slept on his floor. Went out, had Belgian waffles at the street fair. Went to that Brazilian restaurant.
Oh,
had
my God.
some real Brazilian food.
I remember.
Went to the where they had the World's Fair that time, and they had the big sail thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Replica of a sail. And I remember when we left, Vince Ebo was going, man, what are y'all doing? Leave. You shouldn't be leaving. You should be going anywhere. You know, he was just like on and on, you know, and we got on that train and I think going, there was all these the war veterans. They were going to one of those things that they have in Europe where on Armistice Day or something, you know, they all gather in Europe at some great battle site. You remember that?
I do.
And we were talking to these guys, you know, and man, it was great. And they had the dessert cart coming up and down the aisle and stuff. And then
coffee.
Coffee,
best coffee
really,
ever.
really good coffee.
Yeah, I remember.
That coffee was the bomb.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for us, this is so amazing. When it's time for us to leave Belgium, we go to the
train or something.
Well, we go to the train. We get on the train, and we're trying to figure out once we get back in London, because the train took us all the way to Heathrow Airport, and we're trying to figure out where to get off. And we get off the train and we get on this escalator, and we go to an escalator, and there's Chuck and the guys in line. Remember that?
I do.
And Vince Ebo turns around and goes, well, what? There goes Lewis and Clark.
Oh, my. What a memory.
I said, yeah, baby, we did it. We did it. We had a great time. Oh, boy, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Well, I was talking to somebody on the show a couple of weeks ago about Flavo and Greenbelt and all those festivals they used to have, you know, and how much fun it was going over there and playing. And, yeah, it's totally different now. I don't even know. I'm playing a festival next month up in Quincy, California, or something like that. It's up near the Oregon border. It's so far north that we're actually flying into Sacramento and driving.
Wow.
The rest of the way. But yeah. So now you're teaching at a high school, middle school.
Middle school. Yeah.
And what? And you're a worship leader.
Yes, indeed.
And your kids play with you at church?
They do. With two out of three. Well, actually, they've all played, but two of them, especially the older ones, play regularly with me. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, man. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, my son Max is a fine drummer, really good drummer. He's also now a music journalist, trying to get a foot in that door and doing a lot of writing, mostly about the metal scene, but also other kinds of things too. And my daughter Abigail is an amazing pianist and singer, and now studying musical theater stuff at Cal State Fullerton. So she's trying to pursue that part of her gift. And my youngest daughter, Grace, is also becoming an amazing piano player, playing some jazz stuff right now. That's just, wow. Are you kidding me? I'll grab the bass off the wall and start jamming with her. It's really fun.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, it's cool. But yeah,
go on.
Max and Abby, the two older ones, play with me, and they're a critical part of the worship team actually at church. It's like if they weren't there, man. I mean, I should just say when they are there, the quality level goes way up, and it's just a great blessing to be able to do that together with them. And yeah, it's a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, are you doing any upright stuff around?
No, I sold my upright. Man, that's got to be 20 years ago. More than that. 20, yeah, I did. I regret it in some ways, but in other ways, it opened up. You know, I think at that time in my life, it was like there's this part of what I was as a person that was I felt like it was locked in, you know, like this identity as an upright jazz bass player. And I move in other directions and be something different than I was, you know what I mean? And so, and part of that was like I felt like I just needed to separate from that identity. So selling my bass to Shelly Denny, as it turned out, was a life decision kind of thing that kind of had to happen. And so, and you know, in retrospect, it's like, that was a foolish thing to do. But how many foolish things do we do? So, you know, but it opened up, a reason to explore other things and say, you know, rather than being a good jazz bass player who plays the same songs, you know, Girl from Ipanema and Misty over and over again, you know, I don't want to do that the rest of my life. I want to do some other different things. And so it allowed some other things to open up. And I think in the long run, you know, God had a plan for all that kind of stuff and says, okay, so there's other parts of who you are that I want you to use and to discover the ability to even do them badly, but do them with a sincere heart and try to those gifts for him. You know, that's what I'm trying to do now. So that, being a guitar player, piano player, singer, worship leader is, wow, that's not what I ever would have thought I would be doing 25 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
So, but you know, again, it's like, that's the kind of thing that can happen. I think when you say, okay, I'm looking for a way to use gifts for the right reason. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any of us were thinking that at Malarkey's.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe there were times that Chuck was, because Chuck was pretty much saved before any of us. You know, he and Mike Butera.
Mm-hmm. But I remember meeting Chuck. I met Chuck when he was Chuck, and you know, Chuck Ashworth, and playing in some blues up in Yuba City. And here's, you know, and so it was a big mess, you know. So having been in that same scene and knowing, you know, what that was about, and then coming out of it and saying, again, that's looking at people whose lives I know had been in a bad place, and then seeing mine in that place, or worse, much worse. And maybe we know our own fallings and failings best because we're in the midst of them. But then seeing a person whose life comes out of it because of that saving grace, thank heaven for people like that can show us a path by their example and say, no, there's a different way to live. Yeah. So, because
Chuck got me at Warehouse Ministries and introduced me to that thing, and I ended up going to a Christian festival with the 77s, and that's where I got saved.
Huh. So you met Chuck before you met all the other guys. He introduced you to Mike and all the guys in the 77s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, I remember that short stint I spent in Sacramento in 1979, and I left, And then I came back and I started playing with Roger and those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when you came back, you had that gig with me and Bob, and that you came back into town and you made some calls, and I think we connected, and then I said, "You're back in town? Oh my gosh, let me help you get some work," and that's how we connected to that Monday night gig. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
yeah.
right.
That's
that first time I had been there, I met Chuck, and I think I did some gigs with Chuck and Eric Clevin. Mm-hmm. And what was the short guy that wore glasses that played guitar?
Mark Hertzig.
Mark Hertzig, and those guys. And yeah, we played Malarkeys a lot, and yeah, that was before any of us knew Christ. It was wild.
It was wild, and that's I guess, again, looking back on it, saying that's the life that could be very messy, and you say that some very different things can happen when you get redirected.
Yeah.
Again, hallelujah for that.
All right, man. Time has snuck up on us. It's time to go. Yeah, okay. It flies.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Let's talk on the phone more often.
Okay.
Thank you, folks, for listening in, and may God bless you all. Peace.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.